Education and Social Policy. I wanted to all extend my warm welcome to all of you for today, and thank you for spending some of your time. It's so gorgeous outside, so we really appreciate that you're spending some time here. And also that you came even after we had to cancel the first iteration that we wanted to do. And there were a few more people that were going to come, but unfortunately this is New England and we have winters and snow. And this particular one in March was particularly brutal. So my name is Isabel Cherney, I'm the Dean, and really all I do is welcome people because I have a fantastic group of individuals that work and do all the work on the background. So I want to already thank Tim for all of his work in organizing this, and Tamar for being the inspiration for this day today, and for making sure that we have these incredible speakers here today. So I had the privilege of having lunch with Daisy Kahn and John Kaiser and Ray and Anne-Marie. So I got to speak some of my French, which was great. I never get to speak it. But also to know a little bit more about what the day will bring. And I can assure you, you have the best people here today. And it's going to be a fantastic, interactive afternoon and evening. I hope you can stay. If you have to go somewhere else and come back, that's great as well. So again, thank you for all that you do for the students in your classrooms, for the students here on campus, and for global peace, because all of us, I believe, are working towards that. So have a wonderful and passionate, discussion-filled day, and I will leave it up to Tamara now. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Kelly. I'm a professor of theology and religion at the college, and also the director of the study for the Center of Jewish Christian Muslim Relations. Our name gets longer and longer. It's a pleasure to welcome you all. And I'd just like to point out some of the folks who are here. I won't hit everybody, but the Greater Lowell Interfaith Leadership Alliance. Farouk, is Farouk here? I haven't seen him. He'll be coming. The Islamic Academy for Peace in Methuen. Welcome. Good to have you. Daughters of Abraham are sending some representatives. And again, people will be arriving as the afternoon goes on. The Lawrence School System. Do you have any teachers from Lawrence? Welcome. Great to have you. I just want to say, as a citizen of Lawrence for many years, and I moved across the river to Methuen, forgive me, but there is so much good teaching and heroic teaching that goes on in Lawrence, both in the primary schools and the high schools, and we're not often aware of that, but I know from personal experience of friends and neighbors what a great job you guys do. We have many people here from the School of Education and Social Policy. Any graduate students? Okay, great. Welcome. Burlington Public Schools. Welcome. Thank you for coming so far north, up into the valley. Salem Community Engagement Fellows. Who's working at Salem? Alexandra. It's great to meet you.
You as well.
We're looking forward to, Alexandra is going to be our fellow, working with us in the JCMR Center next year. So we're really excited about that. Penguin Hall. Who's anyone from Penguin Hall? Where is Penguin Hall? Antarctica? Patty Vasiliadis, LaSalle College. Welcome. Salem Public Schools, Amy Duggan. He's not here yet. Let's see who else. Richardson Middle School, which, anyone? Well, where's Richardson? Dracut. Okay, great. It's down up the river. Joanne Mackey, we met when we came in. Joanne is a nurse, right? So great to have you from the healthcare community. Someone else from Penguin Hall, the Academy of Penguin Hall? You're not here. Richard Davison, the community group of Lawrence. Community group, not here. Okay. Well, these are some of the people that will be coming in. And anybody else want to say, I am here representing St. Michael's in North Andover, Dorothy?
Undergraduates and graduates of Merrimack College.
Any Austin scholars? Kevin? Okay, great. Well, welcome. So Merrimack has had the Center for Jewish Christian Muslim Relations for almost 25 years now. We started out as the Center for Jewish Christian Relations and decided we were ignoring 1.5 billion of the world's people, so we became Jewish Christian Muslim about over 10 years ago. And our mission is twofold. One is internal to the college, to encourage our students to be open to different religious traditions, to be excited about learning about other traditions and ways of understanding the universe and relating to each other. And then we also, through the help of especially the William and Mary Grieve Foundation, outreach to regional groups, national groups, and international communities of people as well. And John will talk a little bit more about that. There's our mission. Every word was fought over in committee. You know how that is. It's a mission statement. And we're about to reopen it, so we'll waste a lot of money on that. Okay. Show them our founders. We also have a student group, the Interfaith Student Alliance, and here are some of the founders. I call this the United Colors of Benetton/Merrimack. Literally, Katie, where are you? Our photographer. They all showed up today, one day, in Ken's office about 6 years ago. They took a picture, and our campus photographer, who's an artist in his own right, captured the three of them. What we're talking about today has its roots, in many ways, centuries ago, but certainly in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And Marie and Daisy and I had a wonderful conversation after lunch. If you know your history, the European powers were colonial powers. And for centuries, they went out across the globe and for various reasons invaded different countries and weren't always the most enlightened in the way they treated the local people. Many of the tensions we feel in our world today, be it globalism, nationalism, economic stressors, are the direct results of that period of colonial power and post-colonial issues. You can draw direct lines to what happened, especially after World War I, and with the fall of many powers. So how do we find our way out? How do we address the issues that are in front of us? We're going to spend some time at the beginning talking about a person who, in the midst of the colonial effort, rose up and provided resistance to the people of what we today call Algeria, to the resistance to the French occupation of Algeria. As John will show us, he followed the rules of the Quran, the Holy Quran. He treated all people, both in battle and after battle, with respect and dignity. He lost. France remained a colonial power. He was imprisoned in France and eventually allowed to go to Damascus in Syria. What would you say today about Syria? But both as a general of his people, as a prisoner of war, and then as a basically under house arrest in Syria, he exhibited virtues and strengths and characteristics that we very much need today. So this colonial resistor becomes a model for those of us who are today dealing with post-colonial problems. And so we'll learn a little bit about him and encourage you, especially those of you who are teachers, to think about raising up someone who is an unlikely hero for the 21st century. But the real expert on that, the one who wrote the definitive book on Abd al-Qaeda, is sitting right with us. Privileged to call him a friend, a colleague, supporter of Merrimack College. John Kaiser. What can I say about John Kaiser? This is my chance. He's sitting here quietly. John was a very successful business person who had a vision about cooperative efforts and market sharing between the United States and the Soviet Union quite a while ago. Being rather successful at that, he was able to relax to the south of France and there entered what Carl Jung would call the second half of life, which was reflective and reaching down into the wisdom of himself and of various religious traditions. And John is also a scholar. He's an author of a number of books. And his passion, his concern is that today, in our post-colonial period, we cannot countenance the type of hate or fear of people who are different, especially Islam. It just doesn't make any sense, and it's not going to do anybody any good. In the midst, at the root of his passion is the belief that narrative, that story, especially the story about someone who exhibited virtues of which we need so much today, is a powerful pedagogical tool. So we're delighted. John has been here many, many times. He and I have done work together in other countries with Daisy, and the Algerian government, especially the Ministry of Education, is very interested in his work. And well, I could go on and on, but John might do that. So John, are you ready?
Can everybody hear, though? Should we use the mic?
Use the mic.
Yeah? Is it on?
Thank you, Joseph, but I want to assure you I am not going to go on and on with our guest the rest. In fact, I'm not even supposed to be here today, I found out. But I've been given permission to say a few words so you can understand a little bit how a kind of waspy Chicagoan who raises pigs and never had anything to do with Algeria, Islam, romantically, economically, spiritually, until late in my life. How's this? Do I need to do something here?
There you
Want
go,
me to go
John.
up there? Where do you
like
want
this
me?
one?
Yeah, where are the pigs?
I know. So John is a pig farmer as well, which is really a radical thing to do if you're writing about Islam and Muslims.
Yeah.
We couldn't get the pigs in the picture, but I just thought the combination between John there and writing about those topics was kind of fun. So.
Yes. Well, thank you, Tamar, for all of this preparatory work that you, Joe, and your team have done. So yes, I was told to do a kind of a why this, why now, why me. And maybe I should be egotistical and start out with me. Why me? Since I'm sort of an unlikely person to be running around in Algeria and worrying about the impact of today's environment on our very small but also very important Muslim minority in this country, particularly in this country. I guess you could say this all started because of a love affair with a beautiful woman by the name of La Belle France. As Joe mentioned, after spending 20 years doing work with Russia, bringing their intellectual property to U.S. companies, I had a change of venue, change of lifestyle that my wife and kids reluctantly agreed to, and we went to this hardship post called Vence, south of France. And that was the first time in my life I'd ever actually met Muslims. Maybe I bought a pizza from one on the streets in New York, but I had no Muslim friends in my life, and barely any superficial contact. However, in the south of France, it's hard not to meet Muslims, mostly North Africans, and I came to appreciate my profound ignorance about Islam, some of their beliefs, and mostly how closely they follow Christianity in almost every way, with the exception of one exception. It's pretty important if you're a serious Christian, but if you're a sort of ethical Christian, like many people, and I suppose I could even say it myself, the divinity of Jesus issue isn't the biggest one. But the fact is, Muslims love Jesus. They love Jesus. And the men named their sons Isa. They follow the 5 pillars of Islam, which are all good Catholic and maybe even Protestant practices, including fasting and charity and praying and going on holy pilgrimages, and of course, most importantly, worshiping one God. And Muhammad is his prophet. But what I also learned is that Muhammad does not supersede other prophets. Muhammad is not better, superior. He is simply the last prophet, the last brick in the house, but no better than or no more of a legitimate vehicle of revelation than Adam or Abraham or Moses or Jesus or any of the ones in the Old and New Testament that we all know about. So I kind of was sobered to realize how little difference I could find, other than that the Muslims generally were much nicer and more friendly than the French, and it was much easier to get invited into their home and get a free meal. So this awareness coincided with all the nastiness that was starting to happen in the name of Islam. In the 1990s, Osama had made it into the newspapers, and there was growing concern about the Cole attack on the battleship, or what was that, a destroyer. And people were starting to worry about the Islam threat. So I thought, well, maybe I ought to learn something about this faith that was beginning to be vilified. And I guess it's always been vilified because Christian West has had its problems, and I think throughout the centuries you have a combination of religious prejudice, ethnic prejudice, racial prejudice, and now you have the problems of actual fear of being harmed by a Muslim, even if it's only 1 out of 50 million. So the other thing that was happening when I was in France is a nasty war was going on in Algeria, which the Algerians referred to then and referred to now as the dark years, les années noires. And during the années noires, they were essentially fighting the first edition of ISIS. The Groupe Islamique Armée did basically everything ISIS is doing, has done over the last whatever. But they've been around 8 years, 9 years. The only difference being that they didn't do it on social media. And this ugliness, in my view, is simply a French-Algerian microcosm of what we as a country are facing on a global basis with the Arab world. And one of the most dangerous things about the situation today is the incredible ignorance of Americans, non-Muslims in general, and most importantly, the ignorance of Muslims about their own faith. So being kind of interested in history and looking for another adventure, I wanted to go inform myself find a way to inform myself and learn about Islam without going back to college or graduate school or trying to get a degree. I thought a better way might be to engage with Algeria. French, what was once French Algeria, and still is in some sense. And being a sort of a budding writer and liking history and liking adventure, I found an opportunity to write book number 1, which was called The Monks of Tiberine, Faith, Love, and Terror in Algeria, which is essentially a Christian-Muslim love story wrapped in a horror story set in the 90s. But it demonstrated that Muslims and Christians can get along just fine if they just act respectfully towards each other.
People in the back can't hear you. Can you talk into the microphone now?
Oh, I thought I was. Oh,
Well,
okay, sorry
we're getting
about
reports
that.
from the back that.
Okay, how's that? Okay, so Monks of Tiberine became a movie. It was a very enriching experience for me because not only did I learn a lot about how monks interacted and Christians interacted with the Muslims over the 100-odd years that they'd been in what was at first French Algeria and is now Algerian Algeria. But I also deepened my own appreciation of the lessons that can be learned from studying communal monastic life. Because basically the challenges of monastic life, if you're a Benedictine, is the challenge of living together with other people. Except you're locked up in a fairly small space, and getting along is perhaps more difficult when you are in a submarine, so to speak. And that's what a Trappist monastery is like, except it's a rather beautiful submarine set in a nice place, but you have the ongoing challenge of getting on with your brothers. While writing that book, I came across this guy, Emir Abdul Qadir. How did I come across him? Well, very simply, it turned out that the monastery was located at the base of a cliff face, and from where actually this guy directed battles, but at the time I didn't know that. I wanted to lose this guy, Emir Abdul Qadir. He fought a tenacious struggle, a war with the French from 1832 to 1847, with intermittent peaces and treaties. But he finally saw that there was no point in continuing to fight the French when it became clear that they had every intention to stay and colonize the whole country. When previous years that was a kind of a question mark as to whether the French are coming or going or what's their plan. They were as confused as we are today in Afghanistan. I remember going to the cultural center in Algiers and running into a Benedictine nun who came running up to me and said, Mr. Kaiser, I understand you're writing a book about Abdul Qadir. You're doing some research. I said, yeah, I am. Well, I just want you to know, I'm so glad you're doing that, and I want you to read something that I keep very close to my bedside and my heart, and I really want you to have this. So I said, okay. And she runs upstairs and brings down a sheet of paper that has a couple of paragraphs on it that she felt very close to. And I want to read it to you because it also had a transforming effect on me. So what is this excerpt? This is from his spiritual writings. If you think God is what the different communities believe, the Muslims, the Christians, the Jews, the Zoroastrians, the polytheists, and others, he is that, but more. If you think and believe what the prophets, the saints, and the angels profess, he is that, he is still more. None of his creatures worships him in his entirety. No one is an infidel in all the ways relating to God. No one knows all God's facets. Each of his creatures worships and knows him in a certain way and is ignorant of him in others. Error does not exist in this world except in a relative manner. I read that and I thought, wow, this is Vatican II stuff, but it was 100 years before Vatican II. This guy has perfectly articulated all of the reasons why I have always felt uncomfortable about religion, institutional religion, because institutional religion, whether it's Christian or Jewish or Muslim and others that maybe I don't know about, tend to want to take ownership. My God's better than your God. My way is better than your way, and that's part of the reason religion is associated in many people's minds today with fighting, slaughter, violence, and all that stuff that we read about every day. And here's a guy who professes an outlook. He's a good card-carrying Muslim. His views are widely accepted today by everybody that I have spoken to who are familiar with his writings. What he says to me is rational. We're finite. And the finite can't grasp the infinite. God is infinite, mysterious, and beyond all understanding, as the Jews like to say. Christians don't say that quite as much, I don't think, because they've got Jesus. It's humble. You know, God is God. I'm just a little guy. What do I know? I know bits and pieces. We get the foot, we get the toe, we get the tail. None of us get God entirely. And it's inclusive. Nobody's left out. He doesn't condemn anyone, even non-believers. You might feel pity for them. So after reading this, I said, I think I've fallen in love, platonically, but this guy really spoke to me. And fueled 8 years of research and writing. And with that, I will step down.
You're supposed to introduce me, John. That's okay.
What did I do?
You're supposed to introduce me to thank you for your talk. Hi, I'm Tamara Miller, and John has given me the honor of trying to produce and organize curricula around the figure of Abdul-Qadir, who is a person, as I've learned, on par with Gandhi and George Washington. And one of our colleagues coined a term about the three men that we're talking about, that they embody their own nations. So Washington, America, Gandhi, of course, India, and Abdul-Qadir, Algeria, and maybe even the Ummah, the entire Muslim community. So, but the way oops, no, that's John, not me. The way I got here, people said to me, that's kind of nerdy. What do you know about Muslims? And anyway, why should you be talking about Muslims? And that's a really good question. And I hope to pass this, what is this called, this clicker on to Muslim colleagues very shortly. And we're very fortunate to have Daisy here. But I just want to say that I don't feel like an imposter because my tradition, with my relatives, my grandparents coming to America through New York, here they are in Russia at the turn of the century. And this was the only part of my extended family on both sides that has survived. This family from Odessa came before the World War II, before the Nazis. So I kind of feel a connection to other religions and communities who suffer. And one of the themes that Abdelkader raises up for us is protection. And so I feel like it's okay that I'm here as a Jewish New Yorker who also lived in Jerusalem for a good number of years to be a protector and to be trying to be an educator for Muslims and to support Islam in the United States and starting here in the Merrimack Valley. So, yeah. So, I've learned a lot, and I want to share some things with you before I jump into some of the resources, particularly for the teachers here who may want to join us in developing curricula over time. That's a goal. This is not so much a workshop to develop curricula, but it's a beginning, and I'm really hoping that at the end of these couple hours, you are unbelievably curious, committed, and compassionate toward this effort. So, guess where the Mother Mosque is of America? Well, yeah, you see that now. I should have shown you first. But the truth is, okay, before I would have said, you would have said New York. It doesn't, you know you would have said New York. Okay? All right. But you're right, it's Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which really blew my mind initially when I first started to learn about Abdelkader and first started to learn about Muslim history in America. So yeah, this is the Islamic Cultural Heritage Center, the Mother Mosque of America, in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And it's really, you know, mind-blowing to think about that, right? This is Imam Taha Tawil, and he'd be very happy to show anybody who comes and visits. So, how did this story of Abdelkader, can you guys hear me by the way? Okay. How did this story of Abdelkader also, okay, great, end up in Iowa? So in 1846, El-Kader, Iowa was named after Emir Abdelkader. They call it El-Kader. They kind of pronounce it not so much in the Algerian Arabic way, but that's okay. It's a town of 1,700 people. And basically, the Abdelkader Education Project was launched in John's book launch, I guess. And then you, 10 years ago, created the project called Abdelkader Education Project. So there we are. And a river runs through it. It's quite pretty. I thought I was on a movie set, you know, coming from New York. I felt like, you know, the buildings were cardboard and there was nothing behind, but you know, the city girl learns quickly. Okay, so, and like I think Joe Kelly said before, the Abdelkader project is essentially about shaping narratives. And why narratives? Because narratives shape what we do, and what we do shapes reality. So, how do we teach this? So I'm going to go very quickly, and then we'll have time, you know, for those of you who actually sign up for the next thing. I'm going to go quickly to some of the educational materials that we've developed over time that need tweaking, that need help, that need more than just our small team putting things together. The Harvard Pluralism Project was one of the first studies of Abdelkader that I worked on. We took John's narrative and created some case studies. And I'll tell you about the case study and what kind of pedagogical curriculum it engenders. A case study is a scenario that presents a problem requiring interactive responses by students that you're familiar with. You're all creative teachers and educators and doers and thinkers. So, you know, of course, that's something you need to be interested in doing. So we created something called a case study called Rumors in Damascus in the Shadow of the Sword. We initially called it Rumors in Damascus, but John likes things a little edgy, so he added the Shadow of the Sword. Okay. Here's a case structure. Case A, and it's only 4 pages, so it's really manageable. Case A gives the background, context, and dilemma of a protagonist. Our protagonist is who? Abdelkader, okay. Case B is what happened for real. That's 1 page of a case. Then we have materials that are the consequences of the decision that the protagonist made. And then we have the lessons that we, as people who are identifying with the story, learning the story, connecting our own lives to a 19th century hero, what do we glean from this story? Okay, so that's the case structure of the Harvard Pluralism Project cases. So we have background and context. We have time, place, stories, and the dilemma. Okay? So the end of case A ends with a moment of risk. What is the challenge? You know, if there's no challenge and there's no risk, well, what is leadership? Okay, if Abdelkader had it easy fighting the French for 14 years, arguing with tribes in the desert, and, you know, risking and losing a lot of men, well, he wouldn't be the person, the legacy that we have today. So case A ends with some drama. So I'd like to give you a sense of what that is, and first call on Joe to read the first piece of a part of case A. Okay?
The place is Damascus, Syria, in the year is 1860. Under the sponsorship of the French government, Abdelkader moved to Damascus from France with his family, together with loyal Algerian war veterans. He settled into a life of study, reflection, and teaching in the great Umayyad Mosque. His home was a 2-story, 30-room Tudor mansion on the Naqib Alley, with a tiled interior courtyard, alabaster fountain, and rich history. It was once the residence of the great 12th century philosopher of universal love, Ibn Arabi.
However, in July 1860, the relative peace of Abdelkader's home in exile was shattered. There were rumors about plans to attack Christians, and which proved true. Abdelkader succeeded in appealing to the French embassy for arms to protect the Christians in Damascus. He and his Algerian fighters were equipped to face the onslaught. He first ordered the rescue of French, Dutch, American, and Russian diplomats, and then, with the help of his sons, he led 1,000 to the safety of his mansion, transferring them under guard, 100 at a time, to the citadel of Damascus.
After hoisting the French flag on the roof of his villa, he and a handful of countrymen rushed into the cobblestone streets of the Christian quarter to rescue the Franciscan and Lazarites, as well as others who were being pillaged, raped, forcibly circumcised, and slaughtered in their homes.
2 days after the riots began, Abdelkader's home was besieged by an enraged mob of Arabs, Kurds, and Druze, shouting for the emir to hand over the Christians. Give us the Christians. Keep the diplomats, but give us the Christians. They attacked your country. Why are you protecting them? Hand over those you are protecting, or you will be punished the same as those you are protecting. You've killed Christians yourself. How can you oppose us for avenging their insults? You are like the infidels yourself. Hand over those you are protecting, or you will suffer the same fate as those you are hiding.
Thank you. So I think you can see by that anecdote in the case that we have challenge, risk, and decision-making on the part of a leader, and it's a matter of life and death. So in this pedagogical approach, basically you present this in your classroom, And you let the students go home and decide and think about what would they do? How would they answer this call? That's number one. And also what really happened. Since many people haven't heard this story, they would have to figure out what the outcome was. So, yes. So basically, at this point, the case method asks, what's at stake? And not only what's at stake for Abdelkader, but for everybody, right? What do you think he decided to do? What were his available choices? What informs your view about what you know about him? And what's the impact of this kind of decision that he made? What did his wife say? Did his children think he was crazy? Were they all worried, crying, in danger? You know, to make an empathic connection with the protagonist in a decision point is a powerful pedagogical tool. What might the Emir feel at the moment of decision? And of course, last, what would I do? Meaning the reader, the learner. And someone asked me, a documentary filmmaker colleague asked, Tamar, would you die for the cause? Because of course that's what was at stake. It's a really difficult question. And if anybody's interested, I can tell you the answer about what I said. But part of teaching is leaving people hanging a bit with curiosity. You have to come back for the story. I'm going quickly because we have a lot to cover. I just want to give you a taste. Some sample guidance for teachers are, depending of course what grade you are teaching, where is Algiers in the first place, right? Do you know someone who has been on Hajj, on the Muslim pilgrimage? That's a good question, Mary McAley. What are the multiple meanings of jihad? Inner struggle, outer struggle, what kind of struggle? How does Bedouin culture compare to pre-revolutionary France? Well, we're getting sophisticated, right? But it's all embedded in this story. And there are lessons for today about tribal conflict and foreign relations. So you see, we have a lot to do from this particular narrative. So that's a short version of the Harvard pluralism case. It's one case of 4 that we did. We also did 3 contemporary cases, and Daisy this afternoon is kind of our contemporary person. So I'll leave you just with the idea that we actually have 3 Cedar Rapids cases as well that complement the kind of values and struggles and dilemmas that Abdelkader had, only they took place in the 20th century. So, we have another partner that John created, and that's with a group in San Jose, California called the Islamic Network Group. And what they put together is 5 distinct lesson plans that they're living on the internet now. They're digital lesson plans with pictures and questions and movies and all kinds of ancillary materials that you can use. And this is the kind of thing where I would like to invite people in the room to join a collection of those of you sitting here and interested parties to really continue to help us develop this curriculum and make it useful, make them come alive. And this is one of the things that we'll work on. And Ali also has a lot of experience doing social studies, fitting it to standards, but also fitting it into students' student engagement and how to make that exciting and happening. So we have some leadership on our team that can actually take this forward. So the Islamic Network Group, in lesson 1, simply goes through young Abdelkader, his education, the kind of where he was born into Bedouin culture, and there's horsemanship and hunting and Quranic scholarship and deserts and philosophers and travel. I mean, the truth is, it's an amazing movie. And I did talk to one of Spielberg's persons, in fact, and I did talk to a couple of people out in California. It's not so obvious that because it's a mega movie, we want to, you know, if we ever do it, we would have to do it big to make it make sense. But that's not here nor there. That's not this curriculum right now, but it has those exciting elements in the story. The second one is the Commander of the Faithful, and that's the 17 years at war, where Abdul-Qadir voluntarily lays down arms so that more innocent lives aren't taken. And he negotiates an exchange and promise to go into exile into either Alexandria in Egypt or Akko at the time in Palestine. But the French had another idea, and he was taken and his family and his entourage into house arrest for 5 years when he was freed by Emperor Louis Napoleon, who eventually becomes an admirer and ally. So, you know, again, this is an amazing movie, and the kids maybe could do some really cool stuff with it in your classrooms. So we have deserts, Bedouins, now we have France. And then, living his faith, he finally got to an Arab, Muslim-majority country in Damascus, where he ended up in scholarship and reflection. But he also ended up, as you probably have figured out by now, saving thousands of Christians. And ultimately, part of his legacy is he's credited with being the precursor to be the precursor to the Geneva Convention on Human Rights, which is really massive. And there's a bust of him in the IRCC, the International Red Cross Committee in Geneva. So, pretty wild. And so you see the story is colorful, and there's a lot of potential for the different kinds of educational things to do. So, in the spirit of Abdul-Qadir, one of the things that the project does, and I'm jumping now to another initiative of the educational project, is a global essay contest for high school students and college students. In fact, we have a college student here who's a graduating senior, Tessa, who is writing a really interesting essay about women in the time of Abdul-Qadir and Abdul-Qadir's treatment of women over the course of his leadership. And I don't think in the 10 years anybody's done that before, so it's a really wonderful idea. This John is, of course, generous again, and there are $500 for high school second place, $1,000 for high school first place, $1,000 for second place college students, and $1,500 for second place college students, which is really a lot of money for a student. And you answer questions reflecting on Abdul-Qadir's life and education and related to yours and relevant to our universe today or different parts of it. So I want to tell you about that. The deadline for this one is May 15th, but we initially had scheduled this before, before the snow, so there's not really time right now for you to scramble, because you actually have to read and write, and it has to be meaningful. So I don't know if anybody can do it in 2 weeks, we'd entertain it, but you might have to wait till next year. Another ask is in the spirit of Abdul-Qadir that I really wanted to point out, and this is maybe a segue into Daisy's fascinating life and talk today. I wanted to bring it into some other things that you could do in your classroom that could be either extracurricular or curricular. So I picked I Am Your Protector, which is a not-for-profit campaign, and you're friends with Donnie also. And I'm going to play you something quickly. It's oh wait, can I do this from here? Can I do it from the presentation? What do I have to do this time?
Click
on the link.
Oh yeah, click on the link. Right, duh. Okay. The theme of Abdul-Qadir being a protector, I just want to say the theory of change is a little bit different than contact theory for peacemaking, social justice, interfaith work. Right? Some of that theory of change is really about, well, if we got to know each other and we had dinner together and we sat in a room like this and we learned what a hijab is and we learned how wonderful, some of our heroes and heroines are, then things would be better. But what the founder of I Am Your Protector says, as a theory of change related to Abdul Qadir, is that protecting a group that's looked at monolithically and hated for that monolithic stereotype, and only when a person from another group protects someone in that hated group, that's when real transformation happens, both for the protector and for the protectee. Okay? So, just want to show you just several, I think it's a minute and a half, of the theory of change behind protection. Turn it on. Did you get the point? Sort of. One of the extraordinary things that that was in New York at Union Square. Okay. How do I get this out of Okay. One of the extraordinary things that happened out of this campaign in New York City is that there was a Pakistani young man who was there and who was deeply moved and then took this I Am Your Protector campaign back to Pakistan and taught Holocaust protectors, Muslim Holocaust protectors for Jews in Muslim majority countries. It's a really mind-blowing thing. So, I Am Your Protector right now has a campaign for the public to submit, either if they have relatives or friends or colleagues or if they themselves, and that you could theoretically they would create a poster that then goes all around the world, either on the side of trucks, in classrooms, big posters, museums. This has really gotten quite far. So, I wanted to share that theme with you. Here are some examples. A Pakistani American who feeds the hungry, thousands of volunteers a year. This was a synagogue that hosted a Muslim community when the mosque was displaced. The parishioners were displaced by arson. And then there was this really cool thing that a student did, that she designed for her senior thesis clothes that turned into jackets, blankets, covers, sleeping bags. They were like transformative, you probably read about it, transformative wear. And so she certainly became a protector, light breast and an adjustable child carrier. I mean, the whole thing is like so amazing. So, and and there's lots more contemporary connections to Abdul Qadir's values, and there's so much more to learn. I'd like to play one thing just because it's a little bit of fun, and because also John had supported a wonderful journalism prize for American journalists who, of all stripes, who both have the capacity and also want to be encouraged to write about the nuanced experience of Muslim Americans and Islam itself. So what they produced, the winner produced something called Secret Life of Muslims. And this one is called, What Does It Mean to Be Muslim? And I think it may be a good segue into, after our few-minute break, to Daisy's wonderful presentation for us this afternoon. I hope you can hear it, actually. Let's see. Okay, is it this?
Are you circumcised?
Really? You guys can laugh, you guys can smile.
Can you hear it? No?
You can make it full screen, possibly.
Islam is a great many things, depending on your perspective.
Muslim is the word used to label people that follow the Islamic religion and believes in the oneness of God.
That's really all it is. There's no secret handshake. You don't have to run through a problem.
Things like not cheating, not stealing, not killing, not hurting folks are principles of faith.
You can't eat pork. There's no pork on my fork. There's pork on my Muslim praise 5 times a day. Not you, the piggy. Wrong except one. It starts with God is merciful. God is compassionate. Compassion and mercy. These are the two concepts.
I'm not hostage to sausage.
There is a Muslim 100% cannot be answered. We're talking about over 1 million people. Oops.
To me, a Muslim is looking all like a lost life. A Muslim is anyone who says he's a Muslim. There's all levels of Muslims. That includes, the secular Muslim who eats BLTs and washes it down with a glass of Pinot.
There are some that are very devout and practicing, and there are some that are not, just like with every other thing.
Nobody in Islam gets to say who is and who is not Muslim. God is the one who determines that. We don't have a Muslim pope, although it'd be cool if we did. It literally means the one who submits to God. Peace.
According to my father, a Muslim is any person who surrenders to a force greater than himself. When I introduced my atheist white boyfriend to my dad goes, listen, Zachary, the word Muslim just means one who surrenders to a force greater than himself. That's it. Does he believe in gravity? So he surrenders to the gravity and it is a force greater than himself. Strong style.
What do I know? I'm just one Muslim out of 1.7 billion Muslims.
So there are 14 of these, and they're doing another, another set, and I think they're really cool educational pieces. I think I will stop now, and we will take a 10-minute break. But if the goal of this particular 45 minutes was to get you a little bit curious about how you can incorporate things about Islam and Muslims and feel confident and capable and daring, and there's a place that will support you, that we're very interested in creating community here at Merrimack at the Jewish Christian Muslim Center to helping people feel like this is possible. So thank you. There are 40 people, many of them senior citizens. And if you have to try anything out, anything new, senior citizens are the best place. They've seen it all, they know it all, and they are compassionate people. So sure enough, I was asked the same exact questions. And I was answering, and literally like a parrot, I was repeating what my husband had said. Because I'd heard it so many times. I was just like a recorder. And then a woman asked a question about Muslim women. And I rattled off all the rights so proudly. I said Muslim women have the right to property, to inheritance, we have the right to divorce. I was just going off and, you know, the rights that Western women only dreamed of or got recently. With pride I was saying that. And then she asked me, I believe you, dear, but can you tell me why that woman was shot in the soccer field in Afghanistan? That was a very traumatic image for me, and those of you who remember that image, there was a woman who was accused of adultery, and she was in a blue burqa, and all these men in a big sports stadium were stoning her and shooting her, and she was falsely accused, and she had 5 children. So I was so angry with that image. Angry because I couldn't do anything about it. I didn't know what to do about it. And when that woman asked me that question, and then she said, and when I froze because I had not answered that question before, and
so can you call me back tomorrow morning?
yeah, we'll let the conversation go. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be fine. Thanks.
Okay. So then she looked at me and she said, never mind, dear, just tell me what you're doing about it. So that question stayed with me, and stayed with me, and stayed with me. As I was driving home, I was thinking to myself, I am an empowered woman who was empowered by my father, my grandfather, my mother, my grandmother. I was sent to the United States to pursue an education. I am empowered by my husband. I'm married to an imam. And I'm living in the most powerful country in the world. That makes me the most powerful Muslim woman in the world, by that definition. And so, if not me, then who? So, the next couple of years I was trying to figure out what to do and how I could serve my community, and eventually I went to my husband and I said, I need to quit my corporate career because I need to help you with the work that you're doing, and I need to help develop our community. Because I knew that's where the work was. And so I asked my husband if he could support me, because I was giving up a very lucrative, cushy corporate job. And my husband's reply was very simple. If you're doing God's work, God will take care of it. And with that, I just left cold turkey. 25-year, beautiful, wonderful architectural design career. But I've never looked back. I've never looked back with regret, because it taught me how to do the work I'm doing today. It trained me on how to think strategically. It helped me to know what it is to envision something big, and what it is to lay a foundation, what it is to excavate really deep to find the real, to put your foundation down, and then it taught me how to build structures around that. So that discipline has served me really well with the work I do today. And then, going back to my childhood, this is a story I heard years later, which is also the start of my memoir, is that I have this memory of me when I was 3 years old, standing in the front lawn, and wearing like boys' shorts and like a haircut that was almost like a boy's haircut. And I didn't know why I was dressed like that. I had no idea, but all my pictures are like that. I'm smiling with like shorts and bangs like this. And so my father comes up to me and he dangles these boxing gloves in front of me, and they're this big with white laces. And then I'm too small to put it on, so he puts it on his hands, and then he goes pow, 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 and he's teaching me how to box and duck and everything else. Of course, I asked my dad later, did you ever give me a pair of boxing gloves? And he said, yes. He remembered it. I said, why? He said, because you were the third of 3 daughters, and you complained that somebody had tried to bully you, and I wanted to teach you how to defend yourself, and if necessary, punch them in the nose. So this is the world I came into. And this is the kind of empowerment I received at a very young age. There was nothing aggressive about it. It was just that There are going to be moments in life when you're going to have to fight the big fight. And you're going to need those boxing gloves. So I'm telling you this story because I never really imagined that I would have to take the boxing gloves out so many times in my life. But it turns out I'm always taking them out. I wear them when I come to America for my education. I wear them when I move out of the womb of my uncle's house to start my career. I wear them when I refuse an arranged marriage to a prince and marry an imam instead. This is a true story. It's in the book. I actually refused to marry a prince. God, where would I have been today? In a palace somewhere? I wear them when I feel the burden of what it means to be a Muslim woman. I wear them when I challenge leaders who define our faith with archaic attitudes. I wear them when I help convince an old woman to stop cutting girls on a filthy table and bring a new light into her life. I wear them to convince imams to issue a fatwa against child marriage. I wear them to honor my faith. And finally, I wear them to fight the extremists among members of my faith. And today, my biggest boxing gloves is in the form of a book. 375-page book, authored by 72 scholars, activists, and academics to help me put this boxing glove out there. Because we are in a big fight, the arena is big, it's not my fight anymore, it's everybody's fight. And the fight is also, the reason why this has been put together like this is so we can all join together. Because this is not my fight only. I didn't create this problem by myself. Joe told you earlier when he first started, we have a lot of responsibility for what's happened in the world. And so we need to join together to fight this fight together. So I am now going to take a few minutes of your time to actually walk you through what is in this book and how we can join together to fight this fight and to educate one another and to create deeper understanding and awareness of the issues. Thank you very much. So we are saying knowledge and extremism because all of you are educators, you know what it's like. The only way you can change hearts and minds and expand brains is to use knowledge. We talked about how the perception of Muslims is largely shaped by the press and how this public perception of Islam and Muslims actually shapes policy. You can hear some of the rhetoric and the politicians and the things that they say. It's because they're getting a lot of their news from the press. And how governments then legislate laws based on misinformation about Islam and Muslims. And I don't have to tell you what they are because many of them you already know. The result is rampant Islamophobia for those people who are getting their information only from the press, increase in hate crimes by 67%, Muslim ban and anti-Sharia legislation, right environment for extremist recruitment, and so the slide went on too fast, but anyway, how is Islamophobia defined? It's anti-Muslim racism, it's hostility towards Islam, unfair discrimination against Muslims, and exclusion of Muslims from political and social affairs. What is violent extremism? Individuals indoctrinated in extreme views, sometimes with overtly ideological messages, who use violence and engage in unlawful activities, including terror, to attain their social, political, and economic goal. So the goal is never religious, it's always something else. How do we address these issues? We need to provide accurate information about who American Muslims are and what they believe. That's a good start. So we're introducing this report to you, as I mentioned, 72 contributors, Muslim and non-Muslim, 375 pages, and in 3 sections. Goals of WISE is to provide accurate information about Islam and Muslims to correct misinformation. How do we do that? By giving voice to American Muslims. We tell our story. Our narrative is written not by others, but we are actually telling you who we are and our history. Offer practical ways to counter Islamophobia and extremism. How do we do that? By showing you, clearly delineating the difference between Islamic theology and extremist ideology. And finally, equip parents and institutions with the skills, knowledge to rapidly respond to incidences of extremist recruitment and anti-Muslim bias. Most parents don't know what to do. They're not skilled. They don't have any mechanism of how to rapidly respond until it's too late. And so we do that by preventing extremist recruitment. There's an entire section on how to understand it, what you can do, and when you can create early interference. Part 1 is called Voices of American Muslims. And these are, by the way, taken from the book, so the layout is like this. So we start with, when did Islam come to America? Most people think Muslims are just immigrants. They just landed here lately, and they are a threat to this nation because they cross our borders and they come and they infiltrate. That's just not the truth. Islam has been here since the days of slavery. And we talk about that. We mentioned how Thomas Jefferson explained that the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom he wrote was designed to protect all faiths, which included the Jews, the Gentiles, the Christian, and the Muslim. Islam has always been a part of America, starting in colonial times. Many of the slaves brought here from Africa were Muslim, and even in their bondage, some kept their faith. Thomas Jefferson explained that the statute he wrote was designed to protect all faiths. I mentioned that already. Then there are at least 25 articles in this section, so I'm skipping over just to show you a few highlights. So one of the highlights is this 7 misconceptions of Muslims, of American Muslims. And they're all laid out. The yellow is the misconception, and the blue is our answer to that. So not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists are Muslims. Muslims are not patriotic. Muslims are responsible for most acts of terrorism in the United States. Muslims are not doing anything to prevent violent extremism. So this is the answer. Not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists are Muslims. Violent extremism dropped by 40% in 2016 as compared to 2015. While self-identifying Muslims are responsible for 123 fatalities since 9/11, more than 230,000 Americans were murdered over the same period. Muslims are not patriotic. Almost 4,000 Muslims serve in the U.S. Armed Forces. There are almost 900 Muslim NYPD officers alone. Muslims are responsible for most acts of terrorism in the United States. From 1980 to 2005, American Muslims were responsible for only 6% of attacks in the U.S. Law enforcement agencies consider anti-government violent extremists as the most severe threat to the nation. And you know that. We don't even need to cite this stuff. We see it ourselves. Muslims aren't doing anything to prevent violent extremism. American Muslims are the single largest source of tips to law enforcement agencies in foiling terrorist tips. Muslims have issued countless condemnations against terrorism since 9/11. See Wise Up for 1,400 condemnations. From now on, if anybody asks you, where are the Muslims and why have they not spoken out? You don't even need the book. We actually gave you a website, Wise Up Report. Click, go to the condemnation, an entire Excel spreadsheet will drop down, which you can spread to all your friends and say, hey, look at all these condemnations that Muslims have been doing since 9/11. Other misconceptions about American Muslims. Mosques are hotbeds for radicalization. A recent survey of over 500 American Muslims conducted by the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding reveals there is absolutely no correlation between frequent mosque attendance and the attitude towards violence against civilians. Muslims who regularly attend mosques are more likely to work with their neighbors to solve community problems, be registered to vote, and are more likely to come to vote. So we then have an article like this, which actually shows you the history of the mosque. You saw the first mosque in Iowa. Well, there was a mosque even before that on the plantation in Georgia, created by a scholar who also happened to be a slave. So the very first was in the plant. So we give you the history of mosques, and and we also show you that mosques are beginning to look more and more like churches. They're beginning to look more as an American expression of Islam is taking root within the mosque. You have Sunday school, you have lecture series, you have coffee hour, you have cultural events, you have interfaith relations. So, and some mosques are almost mega mosques. They're beginning to look just like the churches, and so that is also taking root in America. So it's good to see how it's developing. We end the section with frequently asked questions about Islam. How do American Muslims participate in American public life? Is there a conflict between being a Muslim and American? Is it true that many Muslims in the world hate America? Because this is what Donald Trump said. Islam hates us, so we have to answer that question. So then we end the section with a little bit of hope. Like you saw this little film before, we took it a notch and we wanted to show you how Muslims are actually contributing to America. This is just a little sampling of who they are. So we took 35 notable American Muslims and we showed you Dave Chappelle, Dr. Mohammed Oz, Fareed Zakaria. You know, you eat Chobani yogurt, that guy was a Muslim. That guy is a Muslim, I should say. So Keith Ellison and so on. So if you read Kite Runner, that guy is a Muslim. So I just want people to know that we're contributing to the society. And we'll show a video of that later. So part 2, Islamic theology versus extremist ideology. It's really important because the link between Islam and terrorism has gotten so entrenched in the minds of Americans because the press continually links the two. Have you ever seen them call it anything other than Islamic radicalism, Islamic terrorism, Islamic? There's always the word Islamic is right next to it. And so people are beginning to think it's penetrated into the psyche of most Americans that there must be a flaw in Islam itself. There must be something there, because why are they doing it? So we wanted to delink it forever, but we didn't know how terrorists were weaponizing our religion, how they were using it, if they were using it. So we did a lot of research. When I said I do excavation really well, so I wanted to excavate. We went into the bowels of the websites of the dark web to find this information, where it resides. So we wanted to flesh it out, bring it to the public, because not everybody can do this research, because if you do this research, your IP address is followed, and you are considered a suspect. So we took the risk. We're an organization. Everybody knew we were doing this research, so we wanted to show this black and white to everybody. So, common misconception about Islam. Islam is antithetical to Judaism and Christianity. John already talked about that. The Quran prescribes tolerance of and eternal life to Jews and asks Muslims to accept their message in the Torah. There is no cosmic war against Christianity or Judaism as commonly claimed by Muslim extremists, and Islam quotes alike. Rather, these faiths have been named allies of the Muslim world by Prophet Muhammad. So this is in the book in the section. Allah is exclusively the God of Islam. Muslims worship the same God as Jews and Christians, the God of the Prophet Abraham. The word Allah is the word of God in Arabic. In the same way, Allah in Aramaic and Elohim in Hebrew means God. It's also important to note that Christian Arabs also use the word Allah for God. So when you go to the Middle East, they refer to God as Allah. We wanted to show you, those who are educators, that you need to know the major milestones of Islam. You know, when did it all begin? Actually, Islam began even before Prophet Muhammad, according to the Quran, meaning the first revelation, Adam. Adam is the first one that received, you know, that God sent down. So we go all the way back to Adam. But Prophet Muhammad is the prophet of Islam as we understand it. So this is his timeline. We wanted to show his birth, his first revelation, how he was a tradesman, when he received his sign of prophecy, you know, when he married his first wife, when did his public preaching begin, when did he receive his first revelation, when did he migrate, what is called migration, which is the first calendar of the Islamic calendar, is called Hijrah. You know, we have our own name for that, and that is when he actually had to migrate to save his life. Year of the sorrow, when everybody in his family died. The night journey, when he actually ascended to heaven and had his first meeting with God. And then the Pact of Medina, where he created a peace treaty between all the tribes. All the battles he had to fight. When people tell you, oh, Islam was spread by the sword, they have so many battles. Well, we laid them all out for you. We want you to know all the battles he fought and why, and how many people died in these battles, and what were these battles all about. So it's very clear now. It's not a mystery anymore. So, and when did he die? And basically, it's important for me because many Muslims don't know this. So when I was writing this, I wasn't writing this for you, sweetie. You're probably not a Muslim, right? I was writing this for you. You're a Muslim. I bet you don't know half these dates, right? You should have this on your fingertips like that. Now we put it here. It's this small. You need to have this information on your fingertips. So then we have the 5 beliefs of Muslims. What do we believe in? And as you read this, like John said, it's no different than Christianity or Judaism. It's the same thing.
or really any great world religion. Belief in one God, belief that God has communicated with mankind through scriptures, and we believe in all the scriptures that have been revealed to mankind. Belief in all the prophets, and we list all the prophets: Jacob, Jared, David, Solomon, Moses, Aaron, everybody. Belief in the existence of angels. We do believe in angels. We believe in the hereafter. We call it hell and heaven, and people have a definition of it. The Quran describes hell very descriptively, and some people say it's a rejection of God. Some people say it's hellfire. It's all up to you how you determine that. But it's basically good action versus bad action. If you do good in this life, you go to heaven. If you do bad in this life, you're going to receive your punishment. We mentioned the 5 pillars. What do Muslims do to be a good Muslim? What are the things that you're supposed to do? And by the way, if you don't do all these things, it doesn't make you a bad Muslim. It just makes you not a fully practicing Muslim. So Muslims evolve, and you saw that documentary where people, even some Muslims drink, they eat pork, they lie, they cheat, they do all these things, and they still call themselves Muslim. So this is the idea of what you're supposed to aspire to. This will perfect your faith. Common misconceptions about Islam, more of that. Sharia is a harsh legal system, antithetical to American values. I know some people that are so frightened of Sharia, they think that we're going to require all women wear burqas here. This is from an intelligent woman who said to me once, "But you're going to make us wear burqas." I said, "How am I going to do that?" You know. So the truth is, the vast majority of Muslims understand Sharia as a broad set of values that help them distinguish between ethical and unethical behavior, legitimate or illegitimate governance, appropriate civil and criminal punishments, and protection of human rights. The Constitution allows the personal practice of faith for Muslims, which is the main focus of Sharia, just as it does for observant Jews and Christians. However, no religious law can supersede state or federal law. This is important to understand here in the United States. Sharia commands that Muslims observe the law of the land in which they dwell. So when people say that to me, I say, as a Muslim, I have to adhere to the law of the land. And that's it. So I'm not going to bring another law here. But as a practicing Muslim, I am observing the basic principles of Sharia that I'm required to observe. I can fast in this country, no one's preventing me from doing that. I can go to pilgrimage. I can believe in God. I can pray if I want to. I can do my 5 pillars. No one's preventing me from doing that. So I'm practicing Sharia in that sense. So we just laid this out for you really nicely here in a honeycomb, so you don't get scared of Sharia, so it's a little bit more inviting, like blue and dark blue and little purple, so But it shows you how sophisticated Sharia law is. It's the objectives of Islamic law are the protection of life. People are granted rights and protections by virtue of their humanity rather than belief in Islam. This is really important point. So what do terrorists do? They single out Muslims or non-Muslims, Muslims and Christians and other people. Sharia is supposed to be, governance of Sharia is supposed to apply to all people. So this is when Muslims were in their golden age. They succeeded because they had many minorities that lived under them. And so those minorities were protected under Sharia law. They were not singled out, they were not, so these laws are supposed to apply to everyone in the sense that, the concept of that we are all children of Adam and the concept of human dignity conferred upon all children of Adam are considered to be comparable to natural rights and human rights. So the objective of Islamic law is to help realize the best interests of human beings, including the protection and promotion of 6 rights of human beings. The life to right, when we say the right to life, we don't mean abortion. It's to live a good life and to lead a secure life. So in other words, your life shouldn't be threatened, you shouldn't be killed. Mind, which is education or to expand your intellectual capabilities. Religion, which is for free exercise of your religion. Family and lineage, the right to marry and have children. And the right to wealth, meaning accrue wealth, own property, be as capitalist as you want to be, and dignity. And dignity is conferred to all human beings by God. It's not given by the state, it's given by God. These are the 6 objectives of Islamic law. Now, I can tell you right now, many countries do not follow these. They violate them. And the terrorists violate all of them. But there are many Muslim countries who call themselves Islamic who do not adhere to this. and this is one of the reasons why there's so much mayhem in these countries, is because people do not live up to their own ideals. Just like at times when we have not lived up to our own ideals here, we have fallen short of our own ideals. It creates a lot of pain in us when we see our own values, So we already talked about all this, but this shows you all the rights that are underneath each one of this. Once again, these are applicable to both Muslims and non-Muslims. So now I want to do very quickly 8 Quranic concepts. I call it Daesh because we didn't want to use the term ISIS, because there was a woman who came to me once and she said she was a Wiccan, and why do you keep using the word ISIS? Because ISIS is my goddess. So out of respect for that one woman, I said, she has the right, that we should not, we should not violate her right. And so we started calling it Daesh because Daesh is a term that ISIS gave itself. It's the Arabic name for it. So I wanted to show people how they weaponize Islam, and this is like a Ponzi scheme. And in a Ponzi scheme, they always tell you, you invest in us, and you will get great return at the end of it, right? That's what a Ponzi scheme is. So this is like a Ponzi scheme. They took all major concepts of Islam that Muslims recognize and understand and know, and they twisted them just a little bit, and then they weaponized them and they propagandized them, and I'll show you how they do that. So these are some common terms. Loyalty and disavowal. Ummah and Jama means one community. Kafir and takfir means unbeliever or excommunication. Baya means allegiance. Jihad is struggle. Hijrah is migration. Shaheed is martyr. And Khalifa is successor or caliphate. So these are this is their playbook. This is what they use. And so we lay it out like this. On the left, we show you the concept, the name, and an English translation. Then we show you the true meaning of it, as Muslims all over the world practice it. And then a fake Islamic teaching. This is how it is exploited or weaponized and twisted. Then we took it a step further and we expanded each one to show you on one side the yellow is the truth, as Muslims understand it. And this is a fake, which is how it's weaponized, the dogma and the propaganda. And so let's just take jihad for 1 second. Jihad is an offensive holy war. Though terrorists have wrongly equated jihad with waging holy war on infidels, jihad has never meant holy war in Islam. On the contrary, the Arabic word for warfare is harb, not jihad. In Islam, war is not holy. It's actually never holy. It's only justified or not justified. That's the basis of a war. So if you want to fight a war, if the war is justified and you are defending yourself, like the Prophet had to defend himself against his enemies, he went to war, he waged a war. These are the things you must do. These are the rules of engagement in war. And you will see how they violate all of these rules of engagement. Now this also ties very nicely with Amir Abdul Qadir, who followed most of these rules of engagement. And that's why he's a hero, because he was fighting a real war, and he was not violating any of these. Muslims may not attack non-combatants and civilians of any kind. So first rule, this is what they do. They kill everybody, right? 9/11, they killed non-combatants. And they still kill so many people in their own countries. Afghanistan, you see every single day they're killing civilians. Muslims may not arbitrarily destroy property. They destroy property. They put bombs everywhere, they destroy property. Muslims may not uproot trees. This is to make sure that the environment is protected. You can't even poison the wells. You can't uproot trees, you can't kill animals. You can't kill people who are wounded or fleeing. You may not poison the water wells. Muslims may not commit suicide. Suicide is completely forbidden in Islam. Muslims may not engage in terrorism, may not engage in cheating and treachery, may not commit rape, may not terrorize people, and may not torture any people or animals, and finally, may not wage war against other Muslims. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the hallmark of terrorists. So Muslims, when Muslims tell you they're not Muslims or this is not Islam, you understand why they say that. It is absolute corruption of Islam. It's not Islam. So how do we do this? We show you an article where we lay this all out. And there are 3 articles on jihad which we have written. One is lesser jihad, greater jihad, and jihad for social justice. So you understand that jihad literally means struggle, that either against your own higher, lower self, your own ego, or if you're doing jihad for justice, if you're fighting a just, you want to go and do some protest, you want to fight, you want to do it the non-violent way, that's also laid out here. And then if you have to defend yourself, I just laid that out for you. So all of these articles then have a curriculum for teachers. I mean, it's not a curriculum, it's a work. I'm actually looking for somebody to develop a curriculum. So we just have, for instance, the Prophet's warfare, role in warfare before you start. Where do you think you already know about, what do you think you know about this topic? What sources of information have contributed to your prior knowledge? What do you expect to gain from reading this? And after you finish, what did you learn? What is now your understanding of Prophet Muhammad as a messenger of mercy as opposed to a warmonger? What were areas of deep concern and the gaps in your knowledge? What new sources of information would you now consider to further your knowledge of the subject? And then action steps. Are there any elements in this reading which could be demonstrated in current day living? How would you share this information in a one-on-one discussion? What ways can youth respond to the unit and collectively develop broad awareness? So let's just take an action step of are there any elements in this reading which could be demonstrated in current day living? Many Muslims will tell you innocent Muslims are dying every single day because of drone attacks. They're also non-combatants. They've done nothing. So many people are constantly dying from our own military operations. So why aren't we holding up the Geneva Convention? Why aren't we holding up a higher standard for everybody? And so this is something to really think about and to ponder. Then we end with Islamic terrorism, a whole new section on more frequently asked questions because we couldn't do more articles, so we had to put them in short versions. Is Islam a political movement or ideology? It's a question that we get all the time. Why do some Muslim women cover their hair and faces? This is another question. How are women treated in Muslim countries? And so that is section 2. Section 3, preventing extremist recruitment, starts like this. We actually show you why people join ISIS. Many times people will say they hate our freedoms. That's what we go with. It's not even anywhere. We were looking for it. We couldn't find it anywhere. We dug and we dug and we dug. Nowhere in the recruiting material do they say we hate the West, we hate their freedom, so come and join us. It's not true. So we actually showed you what are considered the push factors and then what are the pull factors. The push factor is a discontent that a human being has in his life, something missing, they're looking for something, and the pull factor is an invitation from the other side saying to you, oh, hey John, I think you're got a little family problem, you have some issues, you feel alienated, there's no meaning in your life, come join us, we will give you brotherhood and sisterhood. So they have an answer for everything. They are so clever, and they're psychologists, they are branders, and they're marketers. And this is why so many innocent people wind up joining them. So we just showed you one that is for Western Muslims, marginalization and alienation, when people feel alienated. And I know this because I have a young girl who's incarcerated right now, and she's a street smart, regular person, born and raised in New Jersey, and I asked her, why'd you do it? Why? What were you thinking? And she said, when I walk in New Jersey outside in the streets, I don't feel so safe, because she wears hijab. And then she said, but they told me over there I'll be very safe. And I'll have real sisterhood, and I'll have real people who are watching out for me. It's simple. It was that simple an equation. And then I asked her, I said, but they're terrorists. She says, well, this is a time of war, we're all fighting. How many drone attacks have killed Muslims? And she just shouted back. I don't have an answer. How many millions have we killed? So, so they have their frequently asked questions. When somebody asks you a question, this is how you answer it. For example, the glory heroes are important. This is really important because a lot of people in this day and age not finding good exemplars in their family. They don't have good heroes. They don't have great teachers. I grew up, I had great teachers, great grandmother, grandfather, and like surrounded by nothing but heroes. And so when people don't have heroes in their families, their lives, they're looking externally. And the tragedy is they're not told that they are going to meet a hero, they're told that you are the hero. If you do this, you will become a hero. So people want to be a hero, everybody wants relevance and they want something in their lives. So then we want to show you what are considered vulnerability factors, and this is applicable, your teachers, you see young people all the time. So these are vulnerability factors. They can be relational, something happening in your family. It can be social identity, where you feel that you have an identity malay or sense of being stigmatized, discriminated against, bullied. It could be any number of things. Psychological, you may have frailty, some kind of disorder. You may have a distress. It could be personal, troubled adolescence, difficult life events. It could be a spiritual crisis where you feel that you're looking for God and you don't know where to find Him. Or it can be external. So for a lot of Muslims, the external factor is very big because polarized and polarizing societal debates affect Muslims. Like it affected me when the Iranian Revolution was unfolding and I didn't have anybody to speak to. I didn't know how to deal with the situation, internalize it, government positioning on poorly understood national and international issues, highly public and media discourse, and discourse and propaganda that is readily available online. So that is also very key. And in recent times, we've heard about some of the social media companies have kind of come to the recognition that they are contributing to this problem, because if you have a convert who is looking for information on Islam and they just Google jihad out of curiosity to see what that term means, and they find themselves in a terrorist thing because jihad is one of the most frequently search engine thing. When they go there, they see one video. Guess what? YouTube sends you more videos like that. You know that when we do a search, don't they send us other things? Well, they also contribute to that by sending you more extremist recruitment stuff. And before you know it, you're consuming more than you had even envisioned. And you get pulled into it, and you get pulled into it, and then you find yourself kind of going that path. So other people are contributing to it, so it's not just the individual themselves. So protective factors are the exact opposite of this. So what do you have to do to put in place to create protection around that young person or that person who is, so external in this case would be presence of counter-extremist discourse in general society. That's what I'm doing. I want to create an open discussion about this issue. We should no longer be afraid to have an open discourse on this issue, because guess what? Today it's Islam, and it's already the white supremacists, and it's already the Buddhists killing Muslim Rohingyas. It's already the Hindus. It's the same mindset, the same psychology, only a different religion or a different set of a group of people, because the psychology is the same. Us versus them. We are the purists, everybody else is dispensable, and oh, by the way, we can use violence to get rid of people. So we have to be cognizant of how this works, because it's applicable to other groups as well. So we have an article by a veteran who's done a lot of work on counteracting hate speech, because he's lived in Muslim countries, he knows Muslims intimately, and he's come back, he's taken it upon himself to really create dialogue, and he's written this very nice article, Counteracting Hate Speech, of how do you actually do this. Consider the person's emotions, remember that changing beliefs is hard, respect that people have sticky identities, combat misinformation, acknowledge the impact of social norms. So this is kind of like the kind of stuff that you can read and use in your own discourse as you're trying to change somebody's mindset. We have something called 5 Ds of bystander intervention, how to be an effective bystander and not get yourself harmed. So if somebody is in the way and they're getting, knocked in front of you, your tendency is to jump right in. Understand that there are other ways to do that before you put yourself in harm's way, because there was a story about 3 people in Portland, Portland, Oregon. 2 of those young men died. They were trying to interfere and trying to protect 2 girls, and they were stabbed. So one doesn't have to put themselves in harm's way. You can do this much more effectively. So this is also raised by somebody who's a friend of mine, Emily, and she does this kind of work. Distract, delay, direct intervention, delegate, and document, and then finally. We come to the hero section because heroes provide an invitation. So we ended the book with heroes because we really wanted people to get inspired by other people's stories, to see that there is other ways to do, other ways to fight the big fight, other ways to get involved, other ways to create meaning in life, that one doesn't have to resort to violence, that other people have done this so much more effectively. And more importantly, it's better to save a life than to kill a life. And so if you give your life in the process of saving another life, that is honorable and that is a real hero. So the hero provides an invitation to explore the breadth and depth of Islam's role in shaping the aspirations and values of many hundreds of millions of Muslims. There are no heroic images of Muslims anywhere. All you see is negative stuff. So people internalize this when they don't have real heroes. So we took the time to take out about 30 heroes from the very beginning of time to now and add some contemporary and distinct heroes. And of course, one of our first heroes is Amir Abdul Qadir. We put him in here because he's a hero of humanity. And he said politics shapes the spirit while the sacred enlarges the spirit without limits. And can you imagine when I have been in a room where I have told Muslims about the Geneva Convention, that they have to follow the Geneva Convention, and you know what they say? That's just West created that. They have no idea that Amir Abdul Qadir was the inspiration behind that. So can you imagine? So this is why we want to bring this out. And so what did we do with Wise Up? We already launched it in 2017. You can see everybody was excited. We had government people there. We had NGOs. We had think tanks. It was in DC, in the heart of DC, and we were expecting all the press to be there, right? It took us 3 years to do this, 375 pages, 72 scholars. I thought this is going to get the attention of the press. Surely they're going to cover us. Guess what? They said they were too busy with Donald Trump. They're only doing political reporting. So all of a sudden, we wound up being non-political to, just a religious thing. And yet, when it comes to terrorism, they will loop us in for 24 hours and we'll be seeing the reaction of terrorists. So this is the problem, is that if you didn't hear about this, it's because the media chose not to cover it. Who has endorsed it? 15 faith organizations, 100 mosques around the country, civic organizations. What's next for this? We are doing town hall dialogues. This is an equivalent of a town hall dialogue where I'm coming, speaking to you directly. We're going to have a face-to-face in a few minutes. Government outreach. We are doing government outreach with elected officials. We are planning to do online educational outreach for clergy and activists to do a Zoom training for people where they can get on the Zoom with us for 2 hours. Community resilience trainings for parents, teachers, imams, and social workers. And impact public opinion, where we get to send this book out in Ramadan, thousands of these copies, to everybody that we know, in the media and in Congress. So this is what the town hall dialogues look like. And this is what our government, so we are going to be doing a congressional briefing. And with that congressional briefing, we will be making some policy recommendations culled from the first section of this book. Online education, we talked about this. Community resiliency, we talked about this. And public opinion is to send this to all the anchors. So this is Ali Velshi, he's on MSNBC. And when he received this book, he said this will change the way we report on Islam in America. He said this needs to be at every producer's desk. So this is what we're doing right now, is raising some funds to get all the money together so we can also send it to media. We can also send it to the 2,500 mayors around the country. We can send it to the 535 elected officials. And we can keep sending it because every time we give it to people, they say, thank you, I never knew where to find this information. So I will end with, on a high note, to show you who American Muslims are and how they're contributing. It's a short little video. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, media person, IT person, media person. So it should, that's the one. Anyway, I think that we are at the next stage where we can take questions. And I hope this hasn't been too overwhelming for you, but good. Okay. Questions?
So I'm an elementary school teacher. Have you guys done a lot of, or if any, research, conversations on how to address this at such young and precious ages of really setting kids up for their beliefs and how they will treat other students?
Yeah. So this is an area that is very new for us, And we have not thought about, we are speaking to different educators who are, some who are in Muslim schools, who are teaching Muslims, and we have not reached the stage yet where we can say that we have any meaningful material ready. But this was originally done primarily for adults. We wanted to keep the heroes in there, which are very short, little snippets, so parents could read to their children the heroic stories, but also the 5 pillars and the basic stuff is very easy to understand. But we're open. This is a tool that can go places.
Yeah, also in the network there, we have connections with people who are trying to do some of this work together. And you can join in and helping make it happen too. Whoa.
I saw your...
That's a good sign the bells are going. Just like God was listening.
In your media distribution, you had the Times, the Post, and all the liberal outlets. Are you trying to also, or have you gotten this into Fox News and USA Today, and there's other voices with the media, and the ones that are already attuned to you?
Yeah, so actually we have not started the outreach to the media. What you were just seeing was just some of the media that tends to report, but no. So we actually are working with Ali Velshi right now on how should we target the media, because what happens with media is you send a book and they have like a desk where all the books just get thrown in there because people are sending books all the time. And this is money and effort, and we've paid for this with literally three years of our life, and it's a tool. So we don't want this book to just land on a desk. So we are trying to identify key people whom it can be sent to, like the people who are producers of certain shows. And that's hard work because we have to do a lot of research, and he's helping us with that. Of course it's going to go to conservative media. They are the ones who actually need it. So, some are going to go with like a handwritten note from me because I know some of these people, they've covered me in the past. But when we are going to send a mass mailing out, it has to be very targeted. It has to go to the right person with the right note.
Don't you think you also need a 2-page summary or something that, people aren't going to sit down and read that very readily unless they really put a whole lot of time aside. It seems to me you need to have a 2-pager, or a 1-pager, or a 3-pager max, or somehow draw them into this thing.
Yeah, so we have some information like that where we've done like a little concise thing, but just to show you how this is going to work. So we just got a call the other day from somebody who knows me from PBS when I was in a documentary. Just so happened he's doing a documentary, 2-hour PBS documentary on the history of Islam in America. So he just wanted to interview me to just get this thing. I said, no, don't interview me. Come over here, buy this book, because we wrote this is Islam in America. There's 25 articles. What do you want to know? So he's so excited. All the research is done now for him, and now he can figure out how to tell the story. So do you see the value of that? This is what I'm saying. So if that gets aired and you have something like that, that's a direct impact of what we created here. But as far as concise, when we sent this out, 60 Minutes has it, for instance. Now, before they're about to do a story on this thing, they go through this whole thing, they read the table of contents, they go, oh, Sharia right here, or they go into our website and they see which article mentions that, and then they go and they look this up. There's also a companion website which does not have the whole book on it, but the table of contents is there, and it's searchable. So if you're looking for something quickly, you can search it. Yes.
As someone I'm a senior Aramaic right now, and one of my majors is religion and theology, and I want to be able to speak about this, and I've read the book, and I think it's really important. But do you think the message is as strong coming from someone who doesn't, like I'm not Muslim, I don't identify with any major religion? Do you think that if I were to go out and this is what I want to do, would come across as powerful as the speech that you just gave to us today?
Yeah, I'll tell you something. It's better for a non-Muslim to speak about Islam than it is for Muslims. Because the message that you convey is very different than the message I convey, because people think that I have some sort of an agenda. Obviously, I'm speaking about my faith. Obviously, I'm speaking from a position of bias, but you're not. You're speaking from a position of, I know the facts, I've figured them out, I've learned it. So, in 2010, where we were being attacked for proposing the community center in Lower Manhattan, many of you heard that story. That was me and my husband. And the people that rallied around us were the interfaith community. And they would go on TV shows on Fox and other places and speak on our behalf and say, no, we know these people. They're not extremists, they're good people. We work with them all the time. And this is not Islam. So it's much more important to have advocates and surrogates who are your allies and your friends, and they don't even have to be religious. We had atheists who were supporting us. So I highly recommend, this is why we created this tool for Muslims who need to know, need to understand their faith a little bit better, but also for non-Muslims to be able to rattle off those kinds of questions that get hurled at you at all times. I mean, if somebody asks you about jihad, you're probably like, I don't know how to answer this question. Well, after you read this, you'll know how to answer it. That's the point. And so we can't rely on the media to do this for us. So we just have to rely on people of good conscience to do it. And it's Muslims and non-Muslims together.
I wanted to go back to the idea of being the protector. I want to protect my brother, my sister. So you were just talking about interfaith dialogue and how this could be also a tool for activists or people who are right now trying to fight all the agenda, the political agenda that we know is happening in this country. So I just read recently, for instance, in Germany there was a hate crime, an anti-Semitic hate crime, and of course outrage in Berlin. People started walking with a kippah on their heads, everybody, and there were Muslims also with the hijab and the kippah. So there's a lot of symbolic actions like that. But I'm trying to think of what kind of framework here we could use for anti-Muslim bigotry and how Jews and Christians could become much more active as protectors of the Muslim community and vice versa. And if there is anti-Semitism, we have seen that actually when some of the Jewish cemetery were vandalized, yes. So some Muslim came and did fundraising on behalf of the Jewish community. So I'm really interested, and I'm looking at now as a Jewish French-American activist who has been engaged in dialogues for many, many years with Muslims. How is your book a tool for this kind of advocacy?
Yeah. So, in 2010, there was a Congressman Keith Ellison called for a congressional hearing on the radicalization of Muslims, and he identified Muslims only. And so it created a lot of uproar in the community because, the people that he brought as his experts were not exactly, the right type of Muslims who knew their stuff. They were like, people who were rebelling against Islam, and people who say that, Islamophobic rhetoric. So we didn't know what to do. So I went to one of the rabbis and I said, what should we do? He said, well, we got to get out on the streets. So, and Obama administration had said nothing about it, and the hearings were about to go on. So we quickly called everybody that we knew in New York, and we created a rally. I named it, Today I'm a Muslim Too. Today, just for one day, I'm a Muslim Too. That's what it was called. We had the symbols of all the religions together. Everybody came out, like 170 organizations signed up like within a week. And we were in Times Square, and a lot of celebrities came out, and they stood by our side. We did a rally. Rain was pouring, but the media covered it. There were 40,000 citations in the media because all religions were coming together in support of Muslims. It's a very powerful symbol. And at the moment it ended, Obama administration and the White House issued a statement because they got strength from us in New York, because until then they thought they were risking, doing something risky. But when they saw this groundswell of interfaith organizations and celebrities coming out and saying things, I think those kinds of efforts need to happen more and more people need to join in. And because I don't think that we can end this, I don't know how we do this with Wise Up. Right now, I'm just trying to get it into the hands of as many people as I can so they can do their own outreach at their own level. But I'm hoping that with the congressional briefing that we'll get some press, and then when we make an announcement that copies are going to thousands of, elected officials and media, and we make a big Ramadan. It's a charity project. It's a charity thing. We're sending these books out. That hopefully that'll get some attention. But I have not been able to get any press interested in this yet in any meaningful way. And that goes to show you that, the press is not being fair. They've never been fair. And even though they always say, where are the Muslims and why don't you condemn and why don't you do this? When we show them what we have done and how we have laid this out, they should be all over it, right? They should be writing about it. They should be promoting it on our behalf so they can help us. No, they just look at it and they go, oh, that's nice, that's nice. Let's talk about more ISIS attacks. Well, this is a tragedy, but this is applicable to everyone. I'm not the only one complaining about this. It's happening to everyone.
One of the things that the press plays out, and you see on TV, is the Sunni-Shia conflict.
Yeah.
So in addition to the terrorist thing, there's always this presentation of the Muslims fighting each other all the time.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's true. So we went from, the terrorists fighting and killing other Muslims and killing non-Muslims to now Shia and Sunni. And in the minds of Americans, now they think that Shia and Sunni have been killing each other forever. That's just not true. There's no history of Shia and Muslim killing one another. Yeah, we split like the Catholics and the Protestants did. And we minded our own business. To you your way, to you your way. Everybody's doing their thing. And this kind of animosity did not exist until only recently now, because there is a Game of Thrones going on over there, where there's a political vacuum and people are asserting their power. And both, it's really a proxy war. It's a war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. It's two nations. It's not even Shia Sunni. It's two nations trying to dominate, making sure that they dominate the region. And so that's what it's about. And the Shia and Sunni, that's the differentiation between the two. But many Shia that I know all over do not buy into this at all. They are skeptical of it, but they know that it's a political, it's political. There's nothing religious about it. But the press plays it up because, you have the mixture of Israel, you have the mixture of, Saudi Arabia, you have the mixture of Iran, you have Donald Trump. You have all these things kind of like creating the perfect storm, and that's very exciting to the press. So I don't know how I don't know what we do about it, but I can tell you that in the community, it has not created a split in the Shia Sunni community here in the United States, which I'm very proud of. The American Muslims are not buying it.
Would you have any idea whether, since Wise Up is from a women's initiative, that many different groups don't look at it seriously because of that?
Yeah.
Is that a problem?
Yeah, well, you're so right on. When I started it, I thought to myself, okay, I'm a women's organization, and so they're going to think, it's just a women's organization, right? But we are the first ones that jump into the fray when things get really rough, right? Women are ready to jump in at any big movement. The suffragettes were started by the women, the abolitionist movement, the child care movement. Any kind of big movement that affects family, community, society is led by women. So I thought to myself, why shouldn't women get involved in peace building, right? We are great peace builders. We are great conveners. We know how to bring warring factions to the table. We're not afraid. But I also knew that if I did this by myself, they wouldn't take me seriously. So that's why I brought all the men in my community together. And I said, Imam, you need to write this article. Or, you know, so a good part of this is written by men. And so it gives it that added gravitas, not legitimacy, because I don't need to be legitimized by them, but it gives it the gravitas because it is a broad spectrum of the Muslim community. My biggest challenge was not that, you know, was a Sunni person telling me, are you going to have Shia in here? I said, yeah. I don't know about that. So that was one. So I said, good, now I'm really going to make sure that's Shia. So then the Shia person said to me, are you going to have an Ahmadiyya in here? I said, I'm thinking, I think we should. Make sure you don't have Ahmadiyya, it's going to be completely dissed. I said, now I'm going to get an Ahmadiyya. Somebody said, you have an Ismaili in here? I said, not yet, but now I'm planning to get an Ismaili. So everybody is in here. I'm trying to teach people a lesson that if you don't even tolerate your own, how are you going to expect everybody else to tolerate you? It's not right. We can't expect Americans to tolerate us and our diversity, and yet we don't celebrate our own pluralism and our own diversity. So yes, everybody's in here. There's a chart in my office that shows there's a check mark, there's a woman, there's a youth, there's a Ismaili. So 72 voices, there's an Arabic expression, 72 means many. You know, 72 virgins, I call the 72 voices. And 72 means many, so it's like just a representation of the spectrum of the Muslim community. So now I think that you may have said something that actually has some truth to it. Maybe the press is not taking it seriously because I am a woman, and they expect some bearded man, you know, with a long beard and robes to come out and say we have issued a big fatwa, which they have, but nobody's listening to their fatwas. So there's an element of truth to that. So, but I'm not deterred by that. I'm just moving full force ahead.